Hello, I'm Kate Ashton. I am 24 and I did the grad dip last year, and now I'm living in Darwin and working at the ABC as a cadet. Thinking about the course last year, internships were probably the best thing about it, and I know everyone says this, but it's definitely true. So last year I did 4 internships. I interned at ABC in Darwin, which is now where I'm working, at 7:30 in Melbourne, at Reuters, and at my grandma's local paper, the Gippsland Times. The advice that I would have to people who are just starting out is really try and plan your second semester as best you can. And I particularly mean this with respect to money, because it is difficult balancing interning and working, but if you can kind of get a sense of how much money you've got saved, or if you have any savings, or how much you're going to be able to work, and like what you can afford to take off, I think that reduces that sort of stress if you can kind of get that worked out in the first instance. Because I'm saying this because I didn't exactly do that, and I wanted to do as many internships which I can, which is what I would encourage you to do, but ultimately I ended up dropping one because I was like, oh my god, I can't afford it, I don't have enough time, so don't do that. I'd also recommend, definitely, if you haven't taken it already, or you weren't planning to, if you're on youth allowance or study, like taking the start of semester loan, just because it's one opportunity that you're going to get to do this unpaid work, and it's terrible that it's unpaid and all those things, but they are really helpful. The other thing I would say is try and go somewhere where you'd want to work. Obviously I'm working at ABC in Darwin now, and I interned here because I've got some family up here as well. And I think that really helped me because I was able to have the editor from ABC Darwin on my application for the cadetship. So if you can go somewhere where you want to work, that's great. And I think especially if you go to a regional place where it is much smaller, the turnover is higher, you've got a good chance, as long as they like you when you're an intern. The other thing that I wanted to say is, as great as interning is, it is quite stressful. And I'm not saying that to scare you, but I just think that it's important people know that even if you're the best intern in the world, you're still going to have days where you're like sitting at a computer being like, I have nothing to do, I have no story ideas, I feel awkward. And I think that happens to everyone, because interning is like every day you're like starting a new job where there's no actual job for you. So of course it's going to be weird. But in saying that, like, people are really nice, people are generally really helpful, and if you are having problems with not having enough work, like, you really just have to like push yourself out of your comfort zone and like ask. But also sometimes there just isn't going to be something for you to do, so don't like beat yourself up if you feel that way. And the last thing would be that I think when I came to ABC in Darwin, I did 3 weeks, which is quite a long time for a placement, but I think longer placements, that it's good because you do learn more and people sort of start to trust you more towards the end. But I also did a balance, like I did some that were only a week, so you can do a mix. For the cadetship application, the first thing that I would want to say is that there is no news quiz. So I'm not sure if you guys are still being made to do news quizzes, but there is not one in the application. So even though it's good to be across the news, don't stress about it too much. The first phase is a questionnaire rather than a resume cover letter, which is great. Just asks you questions like, what do you think was the biggest news story this year? That kind of stuff. And then the second process is a screen test and a writing test, where you just have to write like radio stories under time pressure and do a fake live cross, which seems really scary, and it is, but they also give you the information like a week in advance, and it's only like a minute, so you've got a week to prepare. And then there's an interview, and the interview is also with a panel of people. So I was sort of worried because I hadn't done a job interview in years, but it was much less formal than I thought it would be, and it was with a panel including people who were former cadets. So it was they weren't trying to like spook you. The panel made it like more like a chat, which was great. I think my last advice would be, and I know everyone says this, but consider going to a regional place. Darwin is technically a capital city, but it's more of a regional place, and I love it here. The weather's great. The stories are really interesting, and it's a really unique environment just in terms of the things that happen here, like, I don't know, earthquake, shooting, cyclone. Like, it's been a great learning experience, but it's also way less stressful than I know some of the other cadets, the other ABC cadets who I've met have it in the city. Like, yeah, thinking about working in like the Sydney or the Melbourne newsroom start off, like, I think it'd be quite full on, whereas here you actually have quiet news days where you just have time to like work on your skills and try and learn lots. So yeah, I think the main thing for internships is enjoy yourself, don't beat yourself up if it's not going perfectly, and try and go somewhere that you'd actually want to work. And if anyone has any questions about places to intern or Darwin or the cadetship stuff, feel free to contact me, because I've got a list of questions that were on there. So come the end of the year, very helpful. Thanks.